Thank you for joining our 30-minute session on DocsPlus this afternoon. I know many of you are probably familiar with DocsPlus, might already be using it in your classrooms and with your students. If you're completely new to DocsPlus, and perhaps this is an introduction for you, DocsPlus is a software support tool designed to support secondary school students' literacy skills in terms of both reading and writing. So the idea is that with its built-in support, it increases student independence. It's also a great way of reducing teacher workload because, as you're going to see this afternoon, there's lots of ready-made scaffolded resources that teachers can access across a variety of curriculum subjects to put scaffolded support in place to help with students' writing. And finally, sort of following on from the day-to-day curriculum use, for students who may have access arrangements around readers and scribes, can also be used in exam mode. So I'm Katie, I'm going to be guiding you through DocsPlus over the next 30 minutes. As we've already said, if you've got any questions, you can pop them in the chat box is open on my other screen. I'll pause every now and then, so if you do want to speak to me and ask a question, please feel free to do that. And as we've already said, the session's being recorded, so you will have access to the recording link if you want to look back on anything that I show over the next 30 minutes. Okay, so what I'm going to start with this afternoon is thinking about the first stage in the writing process, which for many of our students is going to be the idea of planning before we move into a writing task. And to find support for planning within DocsPlus, we have an area that's called learning grids. So in the top left-hand corner, you'll find a folder area that takes you through to a built-in curriculum library that's called Learning Grids. Now, it's worth saying this afternoon, I'm showing DocsPlus on my laptop. You can also access DocsPlus on PCs, Chromebooks and iPads. But this afternoon, what you're seeing is my laptop screen. And what we're going to look for in Learning Grids, as you can see, all of the different curriculum areas tabbed along the top. So as a teacher, I can simply go into my curriculum area and find all the different topics and themes that I might be looking to support my students' writing, or in this case, planning for writing within. And you can see on the left-hand side, we've got two different types of DocsPlus resources. We've got workspaces, which we're going to look at to begin with, which are the scaffolded mind map tools that are great for getting those first ideas down into some sort of structured, logical way that we can then refer to when we write. And next, and we're going to look at those following on, are our word bars. And workspaces are really designed to support the planning process and allow students to start to initially gather thoughts and ideas that can then be used within the writing task. And of course, with all the different curriculum subjects, workspaces might take a variety of forms and cover a variety of topics. So, for example, if I was wanting to look within my geography topic, I might be looking at a workspace where what I'm doing is comparing two different countries. So I could go into my geography section and I could find my country comparison. Perhaps I could do a search along the top that would then open up my workspace, allowing me to see a DocsPlus workspace that looks a little bit like this. So obviously directly comparing two countries with some research that we might have been doing around different areas related to the country that we've been studying. So a series of boxes with this organisational frame that I can start to add my ideas into. If I was, for example, reading a text, then I might want to start working with Animal Farm, and I might want to go into Learning Grids this time, into my English Literature category, into my Animal Farm topic. And perhaps what I'm going to do here is start to gather my thoughts that I've found from reading different chapters. So you can see the chapter here, and on the side I've got my different tabs that allow me to gather my thoughts having read those different chapters. So this workspace might be an accumulation of ideas that I keep referring to, that's useful to help me reflect back on what I've previously read and add on my current understanding to the element of the text that I'm reading today. And as I've mentioned, the more I read, the more I could build up my ideas on this workspace. So it can change and develop as the student finds out more about the topic. And finally, it might be that what we're doing is we're gathering some ideas before we start a specific genre of writing. So I've just opened a workspace here that's based around a recount, and you can see that again I've got my title boxes to gather my ideas. What I've also got within this workspace is the ability to use voice notes, and we'll come on to voice notes in more detail a little bit later on. But for students who perhaps don't always fully record their ideas in writing, they can use the voice note recorder to record their spoken ideas, and DocsPlus will then remember them for them to listen back to. So that could be a useful prompt as well, with an idea linked to a different section of a workspace. So lots of these ready-made templates around different curriculum areas, ready for the teacher to start accessing and for the student to start using in preparation for writing. I'm going to take the example today of this workspace around the Black Death. So again, one of those that you're going to find ready to access within Learning Grids. These are really simple to use. So the idea is that each of these tabs has a different concept, a different element related to our topic. And all I need to do is to click into the box, and then I can simply add in whatever language, words, vocabulary. I can put sentences or clusters of words as well in here to start to build up perhaps what I've learned, perhaps what I think I know, perhaps what's already been introduced with my working vocabulary as an introduction from the teacher within the classroom that I then want to incorporate into my writing task. So you can see I've just added on a few ideas here. If I wanted to move on to workspace 2 and start to think about some of the causes of the Black Death, I could start to add on my ideas here as well. So really simple, click in the box and start to just fill in those individual words, clusters of vocabulary, sentences that we might then find useful within the writing task. So we've completed our workspace, let's say. The idea now is that we want to then use this directly to support the writing process. So to do that and to turn it into several different options, in the top left-hand corner, you can see an icon with an arrow in it. And there's a couple of different options that I've got here that I'm going to show you this afternoon. First of all, using my workspace, I could choose to send it into my writing document as a diagram. So what that does is it takes a snapshot of the workspace that we've just been working within, and it puts it directly into my writing page. So for students who might struggle to move between the workspace that they've created and a blank writing document, they can have it embedded at the top of that writing document, ready to access. The other alternative, as I go back to my workspace, is that you can also then have that as a word bar at the bottom of the page. So if I just go back to my document just here, this time what I'm going to do is send it to the document. We've already done that as the diagram. I'm going to choose the lower option that says create word bar. And what this is going to allow me to do is produce a vocabulary bar that's going to sit at the bottom of my writing document. And it gives me lots of options as to how I want the word bar to look. If I want to use all of my tabs on the workspace, or perhaps just one tab at a time, and if I want to split longer words or filter out words. So you can play around with the different options there to fine tune how the word bar is going to look. I'm just going to press OK for now, so we can see what that looks like now. Sitting at the bottom of the writing page, I've got those same tabs that I was using on my workspace, but now I've got that vocabulary prompt at the bottom ready for me to use in my writing at the top. It's worth remembering that when I've changed my workspace to a word bar, all of the words along the bottom are then speech supported. So if I want a reminder of what any of that vocabulary says,
coughing,
I can do a right click on it and have it read aloud to me. So workspaces can be really versatile in how we're allowing students to record ideas and then transition to writing. So there's lots of ready-made ones in Learning Grids. You can also create your own. So if you want to do that, along the top ribbon, there is a tab that says Smart Tab, and then we have a button that says New. And if you press that and go on to the Workspace tab along the top, it asks you how you want to start. So there's several different workspace templates, depending on how you want your organizer to look. Or it may be that you want to start with a completely blank workspace and add on your own boxes and titles. So I'm quickly going to choose that option this afternoon and just start to build up a workspace quite quickly so you can see how easy this is to do. So first of all, we probably want to put some text boxes onto the workspace. So in the box on the left-hand side, I can open up my box options. So I might want to have some that look like this. And all I'm doing here is clicking and dragging on them and moving them to wherever I want them on my workspace. Okay, so I've got my text boxes. I'm probably going to want to put in a title and join some of these boxes together. So to join them together, I've got the green circles that allow me to connect the boxes together. And I'm just going to click and drag out to the connectors to the box that I'm connecting it to. If you want to make the box bigger, there's the green square handles on the corner that are going to make things bigger. And if you want to move things around, you can simply click on the box and start to change what your organizer looks like. And like we looked at before, once you're ready to add in your text, you can start to type in words into the individual text boxes. So it's really simple to build up your own. If you want to change the colours on any of these cells, perhaps to highlight some of the vocabulary that we want to use, simply click on the box, and then along the top you'll find the paint palette option, so I can choose what colour I want my cells to be. So there's lots of ways that you can change cells, add cells, change colour, connect those together in the most appropriate way of organising for your student. And of course, again, then having constructed my workspace, I can choose how I want to use it within my document. So that's workspaces. Any questions so far before we move on to word bars? Okay, I'm going to keep my eye on my other screen just in case anybody's typing. So we're going to move from workspaces now to word bars. So we've looked at how you can create a word bar from a workspace, but what about using some of the ready-made word bars within learning grids? So again, we've got our variety of topics. So it may be that today we're looking for some geography writing support. Perhaps specifically, I'm looking around the Great Barrier Reef for my lesson example. So word bars themselves are also designed to support students at different levels of the writing process. So it may be that for some students, what we want to provide is a word bar that looks like the option here with different topic tabs that's going to help me not only with the language associated with the Great Barrier Reef, but it's also going to start to help me with the structure of my writing because the different tabs have vocabulary related to different elements, concepts or areas. So for students who might struggle with segmenting or ordering writing, this is a really useful way of clustering language together that might be used in different paragraphs or for different explanatory reasons. So this is one example of a topic tabbed word bar. We do also have, and I'm going to stick to my topic of the Great Barrier Reef, what we call an A to Z word bar. So what this does is it still takes our language associated with the same topic, but now it puts it into alphabetical order. So for students who perhaps need a wider working vocabulary and are able to move through their alphabetical system order to find the words that they need, an A to Z word bank introduces more vocabulary. The other side to the word bank is perhaps for some children, students, writers, they need a more focused word bank. So with a limited amount of vocabulary, for those students, I might give them what we call a quick words word bar. So you can see at the bottom now, we've got some single grids, which are allocating our vocabulary linked to transformers. So there's no tabs to move through. I've got the real key vocabulary that I need to hear now related to my topic that I'm going to be writing about, all on a single grid. So those different word banks can provide support at different levels. So students that need a focused vocabulary might be best suited to the quick words. Students that need help segmenting, ordering their writing and can cope with a larger working vocabulary might want the topic tabs, and perhaps students that need access to a much wider working vocabulary would use the A to Z alphabetical order. Now, in terms of changing word banks, you can edit everything that's already there. So if, for example, I was to take my Transformers word bank, I could go into my Smart tab and I could go into Edit and I could change any of the vocabulary here that I wanted to decrease, change, edit, adapt. So for example, I could perhaps change electricity to electrical. So just making those slight adaptations in the edit mode, adding in, changing vocabulary as per the student's needs. So it's easy to edit what's already there. You can also create your own. So to do that, just like we did with the workspace, or Maureen's just put a comment in the chat box that I think you can all read. That's a really good idea, Maureen. So in terms of making your own, like we did with the workspace, we're going to jump into the new option. And because we're making a word bar now, it's asking us which option we want to create. So do we want the topic tabs? Do we want an A to Z word bank, or do we want a writing frame? And writing frames are great for providing longer sentence starters. So you can see I've opened up a ready-made one here that's designed to support writing around a discussion. Great thing about this is I can then add in my topic word. So if today we're writing about climate change, and how we should all be reducing our carbon footprint, I can simply type in my words and I will now find those within my writing frame. But let's imagine we do want to make something completely new. We go into our new tab, we go into our word bar. If I want to make a topic tabbed word bar, I can simply type in my vocabulary. So it might be that we've been reading The Life of Pi and I want to create a word bar around this. So I can just simply add in my vocabulary. If I want words to appear together within the same cell, I'm just going to put brackets around them. And when I press OK now, you can see that those words have been made into a word bar for me along the bottom of my page, and I can keep adding on my individual tabs. So this grid might be my introductory chapter 1 vocabulary. I could add on my next chapter as well. If you want to make an A to Z word bank, well, you're in your new option, choosing the alphabetical grids option. There's a really nice simple way of doing this. If you find any text, so you might already have some text on a worksheet. I've mentioned that we've been reading The Life of Pi. So all I've done here is a quick internet search and I've got some overview notes. I'm simply going to copy all of these and I'm going to go back to DocsPlus and I'm going to paste those in to my box in the middle. I've asked DocsPlus to put it into alphabetical order. I'm going to filter out the high frequency words because I can see lots of the's and next and ands in there. So let's filter out the 2000 most common words. If I press OK and now I press go, it will have put that text into alphabetical order. So if you want to make a very quick A to Z word bank, you can copy and paste any text from pre-existing Word document, worksheets, from an internet search into DocsPlus. Okay, so we've had a look at workspaces, we've had a look at word bars. I'm quickly going to show you analytics. So analytics is a really useful way of understanding how a piece of writing has been put together, and certainly if we're using some of the scaffold at the bottom. So let me just quickly open up a piece of writing that might look like this, and then we will be able to use analytics. So let's imagine we've got to the end of today's lesson. Student has created a piece of text and we want to understand how it's being put together. So to press the analytics button, it's now going to colour code this writing so I, as the teacher, can understand that learner's writing journey. So which words they've written independently, well, they will be the black words from the keyboard. If they've used the DocsPlus spell checker, they'll be highlighted in red. If they've used any words from a word bar along the bottom of the page, then we've got those colour coded as blue. And the tabs along the top help me see which of those words I've been using. And this is really useful information because quite often we see the end product rather than the actual writing journey. Just for the last few minutes, as a reminder, I'm also going to talk about some of the key DocsPlus writing features. Again, some of you might be familiar with these, but it's always good to have a quick recap. So I've got my word bar open at the bottom. We've been reading Animal Farm. I'm going to use this word bar in conjunction with what we call the key writing support features. So let's add in a sentence quickly. So I'm going to say, I have been reading Animal Farm. When I add in my full stop,
I have been reading Animal Farm.
DocsPlus reads everything back to me. So fully speech supported with speech read back as I add in my full stop. Option of voices to change, and also the speed at which that feedback is operating. Everything can be changed within the options tab. I mentioned before that we might have students that need to access the spell checker. So I'm just going to quickly make a spelling error in my next sentence.
It was written by George Orwell.
Okay, so I've got the red squiggly underline. I can hear the spelling error now. To activate my spell checker, I'm going to click on that word and bring up my spell checking options. Again,
Kitten.
Speech feedback by right-clicking on the word within the box to have the word read aloud also. I mentioned earlier the voice note recorder. We saw them within the workspace, that option to record. I can also use that within the writing document. So sound recorder along the top. If I press the red button here, one of the main characters is called Old Major. Press stop and done, and DocsPlus has now stored my spoken voice message for me. So it's useful for students who perhaps struggle with working memory and recall as a learning prompt to support them within their writing journey. And we can listen back to that. One of the main characters is called Old Major as many times as we want to by clicking on it. You can have up to 6 voice notes active within the writing page, and it's just a record and a stop, and you'll see those starting to collect on the left-hand side of the document. And finally then, I'm going to use the last support tool that we have, which is called the word predictor. So working very much like the predictor on your mobile devices now, I start to add in my letters, and DocsPlus is going to predict for me. And you can see the useful thing about this predictor is that it also offers chunks of words. So if I was trying to write that sentence, one of the main characters, I can start to build up this sentence by just adding in a couple of letters at a time. And then, as well as having those support features active, of course, I've got my word bar along the bottom. So at this point, I might want to stop using my predictor and perhaps use some of the vocabulary that I've got in my word bar at the bottom.
Old Major. One of the main characters is Old Major.
And I can continue to write, then building up my sentences supported with the vocabulary along the bottom. So that's just a quick recap of those key writing features: the predictor, the spell checker, and the voice note recorder that you have access to along the top ribbon, and the options tab that allows you to make any changes within DocsPlus to really personalise it to the needs of your learner. I did mention at the start, and I'll touch on this very quickly, but if you do have students that use Reader or Scribe for exams, we do have an exam mode. So what this means is it's password protected. I can lock down any of those writing features that I don't want my students to have access to. If you've got students that do struggle with the reading aspect of the curriculum, DocsPlus also has a reader within it. So an example of this might perhaps be a chapter of a book that we're reading. So any PDF or Word document can be opened up within DocsPlus. I've got my chapter extract from my text, and to read this, all I need to do is highlight the section that I want to have read aloud, use the speaker button along the top.
Among other public buildings in a certain town, which for many reasons it will be prudent to refrain from mentioning.
DocsPlus will then highlight and read aloud. So that could be a text example like today. It could just as easily be a worksheet where students want to have the questions read aloud. And obviously for those students that have reader arrangements for exams, they could then use DocsPlus in replacement of a human reader. Okay, I've whizzed through quite a lot today and I've recognised that we're just about on time. I am going to just quickly finish off by pointing you in the direction of some of the training that we also have on our website. I know you're getting the recording from today's session, particularly these tutorials. So www.cricksoft.com. These tutorials are a fantastic way of having just a shorter burst of training. So if you want to have something, a question answered in 2 or 3 minutes, such as how you create and edit a word bar, there's a whole sort of selection of these here, looking around the key areas of DocsPlus. So do visit those tutorial videos, and again along the top you can choose the device that you're using just to make sure it's completely relevant to the device that you're using DocsPlus on. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Say thank you very much for joining me. If you've got any final questions or you want to talk to me, please, I'm going to be here for the next few minutes and we'll keep the meeting open till sort of 4:05. So if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat or talk to me. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Katie. That was a brilliant whiz through of everything that DocsPlus can do. And thank you to everyone for joining us on this last Thursday 30 of the academic year. It's been, yeah, really, really useful to have you here, Katie. I can see there's somebody just sent a message in the chat. With a recording of the session. Yes, we will send that out to you. Are there any questions? Feel free to unmute yourselves if you'd like to ask, or type into the chat if you have a question.
I've got a quick question, if that's all right. What would you say is the best way, if you've got a school that's a Google school and they're using Google Classroom, what's the best way and the easiest way for a child to save their work and to submit to a teacher in Google Classroom?
That's a great question. So the simple answer is when you go into your save option within DocsPlus, simply choose the folder location where you want to save it. And you can actually set Google Classroom or a Google folder as your default home location. So it will automatically save into whether it's Dropbox, Google Drive, Google Classroom, OneDrive. You can set that as your default home location and it will automatically save in there. So then teachers and support workers can go into that folder and find the same document or resource.
Right, got that. Thank you.
Brilliant. Any more questions? No? Okay, so I think we'll come to an end, Katie. Thank you. And we'll stop recording.
Brilliant. Thanks for your time, everybody. Have a great summer.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.